so much for your kind welcome. Because of the logistics here, I hope you don't mind if I just sit down here and conduct the rest of it from this position. Is that going to be okay? Thank you so much. This is a lecture of some length. I'm going to take my watch off here, but I believe there's a calendar over there on the wall that I can see, so I'll try not to go too far. And as you see, my topic is 400 years of false flags, deceptions, and counter gangs. And of course, it's Guy Fawkes, so what could be better than this? I'm on a kind of a European tour. I'm going to be in 5 or 6 places in Britain. I'm going to be in 5 or 6 in Italy, and then Paris at the end. And I'm doing this because of the strategic emergency. And what I'm trying to do is to do something about the gullibility of world public opinion vis-a-vis false flag operations, because I think that is the greatest strategic menace right now, that the Cheney faction in the United States is going to stage a new false flag, that is a new 9/11, an encore. Who is so gross that cannot see this palpable device? Yet who is so bold that says he sees it not? And I think that's our situation. We've got to learn not to believe in false flag, not to be hoodwinked, not to be suckers, not to be dupes, not to be credulous, but rather to bring to it a tremendous critical faculty based on historical experience. Now, what I recommend, naturally, is buying and reading my books. This is 9/11 Synthetic Terror Made in USA, first edition 2005. I believe we're up to the 4th edition, which we have in the back. Next week in Italy, I'm doing book tour. La Fabbrica del Terrore, the translation of that, has just appeared to actually surprisingly good reviews. And I hope to do something on that front. The Paris edition came out about a year ago, La Terreur Fabriquée. And I also have written in the past for the 1992 election campaign, George Bush, the Unauthorized Biography. And I had a couple of those. They're sold, but maybe somebody else has some to sell. This is the one that starts with Prescott Bush supporting Hitler. That entire complex comes from this book and really nowhere else. And as was mentioned, in 1978 I was asked by a member of the Italian government to write something about the kidnap and murder of Aldo Moro, the former prime minister. And you see the British flag, please don't be offended. The point of this was to say that he was kidnapped and murdered by NATO intelligence. And we would have put the US flag, but in Italy this is such a cliche, nobody would have noticed. We would have put the NATO flag, but nobody knows what that is either. So we said, let's put the British and they'll get the idea. And I think some of them did. Surviving the Cataclysm is about the world currency and banking crisis right now. Maybe we can discuss it at the end. We're in the middle of the death agony of the US dollar. We're in the middle of the breakdown of the entire banking system. You've had Northern Rock, Countrywide Bank in the US. Right now, Citibank and Barclays Bank seem to be the next to take the plunge. And then Against Oligarchy, which is a kind of a phantom book. It used to exist on the internet, but it is widely scattered. You can still find most of it. And I'm going to put out a new edition as soon as my Ford Foundation grant comes in, which may be a while. Now, thanks to these labors, I guess I'm not totally obscure, as was mentioned. I have been on Fox News and CNN and the rest of these things. But, and of course, normally when you go on this program, one of them is for you and one of them is against you. But when I went on, they were both against me. They were never more hysterical than the night that I was on. But let's get to the deeper point of who I am. I have to ask for your patience and forbearance tonight because I have to tell you a lot of things. They're very bad for the Venetians. I don't think that's going to upset too many people. But then after that, there's a phase that's very bad for the British. And that's where I'm afraid. But then I hope I can bring you back because the phase after that is very bad for the US. And so who am I, right? Am I just yet another arrogant, loudmouth American coming over here, lecturing you about your own history, hectoring you, and so forth? Well, maybe I am that. But I hope I can also show you that I'm something else and a bit more broad. My grandmother came from Leeds, and my grandfather came from Wakefield. He was a bricklayer, an English skilled worker, which I thought was a fine thing to be. He was not the vicar of Wakefield, he was the bricker of Wakefield. And from them, I learned everything. When we talk about Guy Fawkes, I have received a formation in Guy Fawkes second to none. I doubt there's anybody here who's heard more about Guy Fawkes from his grandmother than me, and this is how I grew up. And I heard all about Henry VIII eating off the plate, and the princes in the tower, and every week we'd get the Yorkshire Post and the news of the world, which was a very important experience for me, to get the news of the world. So think of me as a representative of the Northern School, of the Yorkshire School, and that is to say, of a current inside the English-speaking world, which is very skeptical about the court, the City of London, the Foreign Office, and the Bank of England. Because I'll manage to attack all of those. I think I see a fellow Northerner there in the back. Now, all kidding aside, the main issue right now is the question of World War III, and in particular, the transition from Middle East regional war to a world war. Now, when I made this slide, not many people were saying World War, but now Bush has said World War III. So this, of course, is the issue. And let's see if we can get into a position to be able to say a few things. You can see the war in Iraq, which is already going on. The big goal right now is to attack Iran. And this is the goal of the entire Cheney faction. Please bear with me. When I say Cheney, I don't mean this alcoholic individual who's had 4 heart attacks, 5 pacemakers, a quadruple bypass, and all the rest. I'm referring to a faction, his controllers, his backers, his office, and so forth. And that is now the main danger. The goal of this faction is what it has been for the last several years. That is to say, the clash of civilizations, the war of civilizations. The notion that U.S. British world domination can only be maintained by promoting the battle of all against all along religious lines. And here's the choke point, of course, as you see, the Straits of Hormuz, the oil aorta of the world through which pass 1/3 of the oil of the world, and the entire supply line for the U.S. forces in Iraq also goes through there in the other direction. Now, I've called attention to the danger of the encirclement and indeed the annihilation of the U.S. forces inside Iraq. If you see their supply line, goes from Kuwait City to Baghdad. If we have the Mahdi army, those are the green arrows, or the Iranians coming across in case of a war, these are 2 400-mile roads that are virtually impossible to defend. And all you need is a bunch of people with machine guns and bazookas or whatever they call them, RPGs. And this can be cut. And therefore, the neocon faction's plan to have this attack is the very midsummer of madness. Now, don't take it from me. Here's Zbigniew Brzezinski. He was the head of the National Security Council for President Carter. He's one of the foreign policy gurus of the Democratic Party. And he said in testimony to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on February 1st, the scenario that we're now living through for a collision with Iran involves a terrorist act in the U.S. blamed on Iran. That's the Cheney doctrine. New 9/11, attack on Iran, martial law in the U.S., and who knows where else. Right now, the Cheney plan is bogged down in the interagency bureaucracy. He's not fighting through the bureaucratic channels. He's got to go around them. He's got to do an end run. He needs an engineered incident, a manufactured provocation outside of it. So this is the heart and soul of the entire Cheney effort. And it's no secret. It's written on the walls. It's written on the front pages of world magazines. Now, on the 26th of August, I was part of a group issuing this warning. And of course, the key notion here is the immediate impeachment of Cheney as a way to encourage loyal and patriotic officers not to obey illegal orders to attack Iran. And